Aaron, why are you here in Quincy today?
Well, it's the Dogwood Festival Parade, and this is one of Quincy's biggest events. And I'm excited that this cycle I've been able to represent all of Adams County, and so this is a way for me to kick off the 2014 re-election campaign with the first parade right here in Quincy. So I'm excited to be here, and it's a beautiful day.
It sure is. Now tell me, how frustrating is it to have so many pending House bills in the Senate?
Well, it's extremely frustrating. I think at the end of the day, people elect us to solve problems, and certainly there's no perfect legislation. We have two bodies of government, or two bodies of the legislature for a reason, the House and the Senate. They're equal branches, they're equal bodies, and certainly if the Senate wants to modify or change our legislation, they should do so, but simply to sit on the bills and to refuse to fix problems facing our country, I think is an abdication of responsibility. Clearly Harry Reid is afraid to have his members vote on controversial bills, and so he's at risk of losing his majority, and I think that's really at the heart of why he's refusing to look at and vote on House bills that have passed. We have over 200 pieces of legislation that are sitting in the Senate that he's refused to let his members vote on.
Are there any pending bills that affect this area specifically that you know of?
Well, there's a lot of pieces of legislation. Everything from tax reform to entitlement reform. Certainly our budget, which reduces our debt, that would affect every Illinoisan, both from youth all the way to senior citizens. There's regulatory reform. Obviously, the EPA is run amok in terms of unilaterally putting new burdens on everything from the coal industry to agriculture to hospitality industries. I hear it every time I'm in Adams County or one of the other 18 counties that I represent. I have two coal-fired plants that have closed since Barack Obama became president and the EPA began putting in their own rules on greenhouse gas emissions. And these are 50 full-time head of household wage jobs making over $50,000 a year, and they didn't close because Congress passed a law, they closed because the Obama administration made new rules on their own. So those are the type of pieces of legislation we're pushing to more clearly define Congress's view of particularly the EPA. If you're in the farming industry, ag industry, which is the #1 industry, they're putting new regulations on the pork and beef industries, as well as the soybean and corn producers. Things like regulating farm dust as a pollutant, regulating what you can do with your own pond and waterways on your private property. This goes far beyond the powers of the federal government as they should be, based on what our Constitution says about states' rights and individual property rights.
What are your thoughts about the upcoming Benghazi hearings?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that Congress has to have special hearings like this. It's clear from the beginning the Obama administration made this a political issue rather than coming clean about what went wrong. We saw it in Secretary Rice's, or rather Ambassador Rice's statements on all of the Sunday morning talk shows right after the tragedy. We saw it in Secretary Clinton's testimony before the Congress when she basically blew off the fact that 4 dead Americans had been killed there, and as though it didn't really matter what went wrong. Look, we got to learn from our mistakes, and at the end of the day, as a public, we have the right to know, and we have an expectation that our elected officials and our government will be honest and forthright with the information. I don't believe for a minute that President Obama or anyone in his administration wanted people to die. However, I do believe mistakes were made. The notion that we did not have assets in the region that could have responded within the 4 hours that this place was under attack has been proven false. The Avignon Air Base in Italy was less than 2 hours away, could have responded. Somebody told them to stand down. Somebody told them to withdraw assets that could have been used to respond to that attack. And we need to get to the bottom of why that decision was made so that those mistakes never happen again.
Sure. Being a member of the Main Street PAC, did you attend the meeting at the Amelia Island?
I was not at Amelia Island, but the Main Street PAC is no different than any other PAC. There's an eclectic group of members that belong. Certainly the Realtors Association that most of the realtors in this region belong to is not defined by any particular members who belong to the Realtors PAC. And so I know there's people who want to make issue with certain people that belong to the Main Street PAC. It's an eclectic group of people, just like any other political action committee that is involved in the political process. The other group I would point to, or the other issue that's going to be on the horizon this next week, is when the House of Representatives votes to hold Lois Lerner in contempt of Congress. And I think this is another sad point in the Obama administration where you have an official who's pled the Fifth and whose all of the evidence up until this point shows that she has done things that are illegal and flies in the face of what the administration had originally told the American public, which was this was all rogue agents in Cincinnati. Nobody in Washington, D.C. knew anything about it. We now have emails and documentation in black and white which prove that these decisions were being forced down from Washington, D.C. The directives were coming from Washington, D.C. to the Office of Tax-Exempt Organizations in Cincinnati, and they were simply following the directions. The folks in Ohio were based on directives from D.C. Who made the play call to go after these conservative groups? We don't yet know, and it's because the Obama administration has blocked us from information and allowed its top official to get away with pleading the Fifth, kept her on the payroll, refused to fire her, and she's now with full pay and benefits in retirement. You know, I think at some point we'd like to hear 2 words out of the White House, 3 perhaps. You are fired. Whether it be the $300 million you spent on a website that still doesn't work, whether it's Benghazi, whether it's the IRS, there's been nobody held accountable. And I think at the end of the day, the American people have an expectation that a chief executive that runs any organization will hold people accountable. Not that they will be imperfect, not that there won't be mistakes that happen, but you know, there needs to be at some point the president getting serious about this, and I think people that have screwed up should be fired and held accountable.